Chapter 4. To my surprise, Officer Benson stormed off without issuing Scott a ticket. Perhaps that was yet to come? Why had Officer Benson apparently let Scott off the hook just when he'd had him cornered? As it turned out, there was a reason for that, but I didn't yet know it. We waited for a moment for the tall campus policeman to put some distance between him and us. Then we resumed our walk. "You pushed the envelope a little there," I said, with Officer Benson. Scott shrugged. "So what if I did? He was jerking me around." For at least two reasons, I was now mildly irked at Scott. First, he had used an unfair advantage to get a prime parking spot in one of the faculty lots. Then he had taken an unnecessary risk by sparring with Officer Benson. He had involved me in the matter. And the whole thing could have been avoided if he'd simply rolled out of bed on time. Scott, Officer Benson, is a decorated veteran. He's also a black man who marched for civil rights. You should respect him. Scott chuckled at that. "What are you laughing at?" I said. "Don't you respect him for all that he's done, for all that he's been through?" "I respect him plenty," Scott said, "but that doesn't mean that I'm going to stand silent and take it while he abuses his authority." "Is that what you think he was doing? What did it look like to you?" "He could have written me a ticket, or he could have let me off with a warning. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to make me squirm. He wanted to push my buttons. So I pushed his buttons right back." I said nothing to this. During the exchange, I had had much the same thought myself. But hadn't Scott been somewhat deserving of the initial rebuke? Scott continued, "You don't let somebody run roughshod over you just because they fought in a war 35 years ago. And you don't let them do it just because they're black either." "Did you read Malcolm Darby's guest editorial in the news record? He says that all white people bear a historic responsibility for the evils of slavery and institutional racism." Scott waved this away. "Malcolm Darby is full of shit. He thinks he's the next Jesse Jackson, but he's just a college campus wannabe." The news record was the UC campus newspaper. Malcolm Darby was the president of the Black Students Association. Darby was known on campus for his zeal or his militancy, depending on your point of view. Last spring, Darby had organized a sit-in to protest the university's investments in South Africa, which was still under apartheid rule in 1987. "Malcolm Darby can be a little much," I acknowledged, "but he makes some legitimate points about apartheid in South Africa." "You mean his sit-in?" Scott said. "Did you read the details about that? The university was invested in one fund that had a minuscule investment in South Africa. One fund, and less than 1% of that fund's total was invested in South Africa. That was what Malcolm Darby's sit-in was about." I hadn't known that, and I had no way of either verifying or challenging Scott's assertion just then. So I let it go. "Malcolm Darby is upset because he was born 20 years too late to participate in the civil rights movement of the 1960s, Scott went on. "So now he's role-playing. That's what his sit-in was all about." "I wonder what Officer Benson thought about Malcolm Darby's sit-in," I said. Scott snorted derisively. "Did you see that article in the news record last spring? They took a quote from Officer Benson. Benson was furious because the sit-in demonstrators were blocking the emergency access routes to the administration building." I hadn't known that either. "Sure," I said, "but apartheid is bad." "Yes, apartheid is bad. But what are you going to do about it from Cincinnati? What is Malcolm Darby doing? I don't see him boarding a plane and going over there. I see Malcolm Darby writing editorials in a university newspaper in Ohio and organizing sit-ins that inconvenience people who have nothing to do with apartheid." I shrugged at this. "Like I told you," Scott pressed, "the university's South African investment was 1% of one fund among the school's entire investment portfolio. It isn't as if our tuition checks are being cashed and sent directly to South Africa. Tuition checks, I said. What would you know about tuition checks? And then Scott stopped walking. I had made a joke of it, but still, he got the point. That was, after all, at the core of Officer Benson's annoyance. As the child of a professor, Scott enjoyed various privileges, starting with, but not limited to, free tuition. We were both standing still now. The other students were walking around us on all sides. What did you mean by that, Paul? Exactly what I said. You don't pay tuition, do you? Because your father is a professor here. That's the larger point that Officer Benson was trying to make. And do you pay tuition? The answer to that question was complicated. I worked a part-time job that paid for my car-related expenses, my textbooks, and my incidentals. But my parents paid my tuition. They had paid for 4 years of tuition for my older sister, Dana, too. No, I acknowledged. I guess not. But I still see Officer Benson's point. It was about privilege. Sure, Paul, I'm lucky to be the son of a college professor. That comes with some advantages. And your dad is a bank executive. You don't think there are people who would envy you for that? He was right. Scott had a way of trapping me in my arguments without fully getting my agreement. You don't lord your advantages over other people, Scott said, but you don't apologize for them either. And you don't refuse to take advantage of what opportunities you've got because of some misplaced sense of guilt. He gave me a friendly slap on the shoulder. Now let's get going. We don't want either of us to be late for class. We've already seen the pitfalls of tardiness this morning, haven't we? As I said in another video completely unrelated to this book that I put here on the channel, political activism was not a defining characteristic of campus life in the late 1980s, at least not where I was at the University of Cincinnati. But one issue that I do remember that came up from time to time was indeed apartheid and the university's investments, mostly in funds that were also invested in South Africa kind of indirectly. And it was a controversy that came up from time to time. I do remember some editorials in the News Record, which was the UC campus newspaper. At that time, I believe it still is. So a little bit of historical authenticity in our story there. Anyway, I will be back soon with Chapter 5.